And then I worked in areas where, which are not perceived as particularly, skilled jobs, but then you'd see some of the great skill that these people had in these manual jobs, but also the great pride that they had in it, which is often something that I always felt was a bit missed by a lot of documentary photographers.
And that's my guest today, Ian Beesley, who, as you're just about to find out, is most definitely a tell-it-like-it-is person. I can't lie, I'd been a bit nervous of talking with Ian, but I think we got on well, to the extent where I'm looking forward to travelling north of where I am right now to go see him in the future and perhaps walk around one of his exhibitions. Barnes, don't do that. Oh, look. I tell you what, I've just returned from India and I've missed the barking machine like anything. But Barnes, what have you just rubbed yourself in? I saw you doing it. What is it? Oh, really? Was that necessary? Come on. I've not missed showering you. Come on, you. So yes, I'm back from my adventures in India with 9 photo walkers, my co-English guide Jason Florio. Yes, I know, the photojournalist, and our 2 guides on the ground, as it were, Shivam and Arvind, who you will meet in the next few weeks when I air our Indian special. Although today, for Extra Milers, an extra conversation I recorded with an Indian photographer, which I think paves the way for the special to come. I've returned, though, with a stack of images that as yet are mostly unedited. 2/3, I think, mostly unedited. Lots of intentions to blitz our Insta with them, because as the days passed, it became obvious to me that the wonderful assault on the senses that I've been told of that is India leaves you at sundown, not thinking about editing, but just needing to sit back in a chair, close your eyes and go, oh. So, yes. I've also returned, actually, with half a tooth. One of my back molars, thanks to a feisty piece of mutton, which serves me right, as everybody said, go veg, Neil, go veg. I have an appointment with my dentist Monday at 11:05. Wish me luck. So, this is today the last of our 3 specials, focusing on the voice of one guest. Though next week the mailbag returns alongside our guests. Today, then, it's Ian Beesley. Ian, that is a photographer who photographs history, culture, and the human condition with remarkable depth. He's, I think, best known for his work documenting the industrial north of England, offering an intimate and unfiltered look at working-class communities and disappearing industries. And we talk much about that as part of his work today. His images, though, his pictures, aren't just about places or jobs or former jobs. They do tell stories of resilience and identity and certainly change. Over the years, his work has been exhibited around the world, and he's collaborated on projects that blend photography with poetry, social commentary, and even healthcare initiatives. Today we'll talk about his journey into photography, the importance of visual storytelling, in particular in preserving history, and how his work has evolved over time.
Today on the Photo Walk.
I went to art college. You really got the feeling that you could actually, you could pursue this profession. Though when the 80s hit, it really did get very, very difficult. And the black and white, it's true, I couldn't afford colour, but I could process and print my own black and white. And I was always wanting to move into colour, but then I was working at a foundry and I was shooting colour and they all complained. Have you ever heard of a thing called a chapbook?
No.
Well, a chapbook is, it's a derivative of the word cheap book.
Right.
And it goes right back to the 16th century. I've always enjoyed talking to people and going to different places and then trying to produce something that, it works on various levels. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's the satisfaction of doing something like that and being lucky enough to be able to do it.
That's Ian Beesley, my guest today on the show. And welcome along as we make our photo walks together, a show where we walk and make pictures, photographically sketchbooking our time together each week. accompanied by the letters and the inspirational stories you've sent in, plus talking with special guests from around the world. Although this week, it's the third of our specials, minus the mailbag, which returns next week. It's a show supported by our wonderful patrons. You keep the show here through your belief and through your contributions to your own special show we call The Extra Mile. Plus, thank you to our sponsor, MPB. A service I use for buying, selling and trading used camera gear is MPB. As a website platform, mpb.com is the place where I can safely buy, sell and trade quality used photo and video gear online. And online guarantees make this a place I feel safe to buy from, unlike some other marketplaces. Here's how it works. You go online to mpb.com and search for gear that you'd like to add to your kit bag. Or if you're selling gear you no longer need, click the button at the top of the website that says Start Selling and Trading and just follow the very easy instructions. From there, you print off a packing label, stick it on the box with all your gear in it. It's collected by a courier free of charge from your front door. And the best bit, MPB pays you for your camera gear within days. So join me in the hundreds of thousands of photographers every year in the US, Europe and the UK who know that MPB is the place to buy, sell, trade and create. Also this month and next we're supported by our friends at Lover Boots. And if you need new boots, then you'll be pleased to know that using the code PHOTOWALK, all one word, on all the W's, lover.co.uk, you can receive 25% off a price of boots or shoes up to the end of April 2025, that is. You'll find the link also on the show page. Right, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. Lover, obviously. Have you got some spare film or an extra SD card? Check. Well, let's walk then.
I should just say before we meet my guest today together that there are two extra segments in today's show. Two extra things. We have this month's new assignment, or newish assignment by now, and Valérie Jardin is here with Teach Me Street. I tell you what, Valérie would have loved being with us in India. I think she'd have particularly... Go on, pups, in you go. Look, in there. Go on. In the water. In particular, she would have loved the station, the railway day that we had, which turned out slightly different to what we've been planning, such as the timetable of the particular line we were on. But it was fantastic. There's some fantastic images coming out from those who toured with us, that's for sure. I know she would have loved that, and she would have devoured with her camera, X100 probably. She would have absolutely devoured the time spent with people on the Holi Festival. What an experience. I think when you talk about life experiences, that has LE in big capital letters, neon lights all over it. It really does. So today, Teach Me Street, where Valérie looks at some of your pictures and answers questions that you've posed to her about candid street photography. So, to my guest, Ian Beesley. We often talk about the enduring qualities photography and photographic projects have, and I think today will be one of those such conversations which underlines the importance of photography projects, yes, but also the importance of locality. Here's my guest today, Ian Beesley.
Ian, I more often than not start an interview by retracing the steps of a photographic youth, misspent or otherwise, and then we just sort of gently coax a plotted history to the current date. But I'm going to start from the other end of the story, from today, just from
All right, okay.
Listen, you were supposed to be retiring a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure, and I talked with Ted Soki the other day, who's been covering LA stories for 4 decades or so. I'm not sure we're ever really supposed to retire as photographers. What went wrong in your attempt?
I think I'm semi-retired, so I think that sums it up better.
What does that mean? That you've stopped making pictures every day?
I tend to just do the things that I like and within the time frame that I like to do it in. Nobody sets any deadlines.
No.
I don't chase any work. I just just fettle about.
Does that still mean that you might take a camera to watch Bradford play on a Saturday afternoon?
Oh, no, I never take my camera to Bradford City.
Do you not?
No, that's too much of a imposition.
Before I get it wrong, you're not based in Bradford now, are you?
No, I was born and bred, and I moved over to Manchester when I was in the 80s because it was so difficult to earn a living in Bradford.
Yeah.
I mean, Bradford has suffered horrendously in the last 4 or 5 decades. It's one of the most deprived cities in the country. So I had to seek employment somewhere else. Though I've been to Bradford this morning. I'm still actively involved with the city.
Yeah, you still got your keys to the city then?
I haven't quite got my keys to the city. I don't get free car parking, so,
But the north of England is your photographic canvas. What is the, I'm going to use the word magnetism, and I say that with a nod to a particular project that's about the magnetic north. Well, what is the magnetism that you've got to the north of England? I know you're born and bred there, but what, as a photographer, has kept you there making stories?
Well, it is. That's the important bit. It's where I live. It's where I was brought up. It's where I feel that I'm part of the community. And I feel that it's something I can actually contribute to the community. And I've always been sort of annoyed and spurred on by the representation of the North, particularly by southern-based middle-class photographers, rather patronising or cynically or whatever come up. And I never thought they had any real great understanding.
What do you mean by that? Showing sort of dark pictures of cobbled streets or something?
Well, yeah. I mean, in the 70s, well, they still do it now. Let's go up north and find some grimness. Let's say how awful it is. And I mean, wherever you live, you're going to find that in any city, in any town. But then there's also that, if you look at the great swathe of British documentary photography, which had this obsession on the North, a lot of the representation that I saw did not reflect my own experience and the experience of my friends and family, particularly having worked in heavy industry. I often thought it was one patronising, a downward gaze, some cynicism in it. It's all that I objected to. And thought, well, if you don't, you either shut up or put up.
Yeah.
So, that's what I've done. I've taken pictures all across the north of England, and the base of it is they're taken for the people who live here. It's about their representation.
I'm thinking of an American example of this would be the photographers that travel to the deep south and just want to show, the caravans and large families living in small houses. I can think of a couple of photographers immediately that have dined out on that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there's a whole swathe of industry based on other people's misery, isn't there?
Yeah, that's true. Kitchen tables and photographic chemicals, though. Let's actually go back to your roots. That's how the story for you starts, isn't it? And it is a classic. Dad was interested in photography. He was a great amateur photographer, wasn't he? And
well, he was an amateur photographer. I don't know whether. Very sadly, I lost all his. I had a suitcase of his negatives, which sadly got lost in one of the many moves.
Oh,
but he was a keen photographer. He was a better artist and calligrapher. He ended up in a life trapped working in a job that he hated.
You've had a fair few jobs yourself, haven't you? You were in labouring, weren't you? Yeah, and as you said, you've worked in a lot of... Do you think that helped in terms of understanding the area and the people and enveloping yourself in that area?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. It gives you a good understanding of what other people's lives are. At least I've got the opportunity to escape from a cycle of unskilled labour and drudgery. And then I worked in areas where, which are not perceived as particularly, skilled jobs, but then you'd see some of the great skill that these people had in these manual jobs, but also the great pride that they had in it, which is often something that I always felt was a bit missed by a lot of documentary photographers. They didn't realise that, there was a lot of people who took great pride in what they did. And they themselves knew that the job, though however menial it was, an important contribution to society.
Is this why you made sure that when you've made a lot of your documentary projects, that you've given time to talk to people?
Well, I spend more time talking than I do taking photographs.
Yeah. Is it an interview as such, sort of process?
No, it's not an interview. It's just chatting to people.
Showing interest, yeah. What did your dad say then when you said, well, I'm going to go study the arts?
He were made up, because he did actually win a scholarship to art college when he was 16, but he couldn't go because the Second World War broke out. So he ended up working in a foundry, building tanks at English Electric.
Right.
And then after the war, the state of the country, coming from a working class background, he didn't have the opportunity to take up his scholarship. So he ended up working in engineering all his life.
So how much time did you both get to go out and photograph and
Well, not a lot really, because he died when I was 20.
Oh, it's a shame. So you didn't spend a lot of time actually embracing those interests together, which would have been fantastic.
Well, we did it when we were younger.
Yeah.
And certainly when I got to art college, he was really made up. For him, that were a really exciting thing. And it's just a shame, really. But that's, And then I realised then, that he'd been trapped into something, doing something all his life that he hated, and probably contributed largely to his early demise.
I didn't know this about you, but you worked, I read this, you worked as a focus puller and locations manager for Monty Python's Meaning of Life, and one of my personal favourites, actually, Ian. Although I have to be in the right mood for this one, because it's odd. Brazil.
Yeah, I was a location finder on that.
Yeah. How on earth did you find some of those locations?
I know the north of England pretty well. It wasn't a particularly pleasant experience to work on, though. So.
Was it not?
No, they were a bit snotty, really.
What, the film industry generally, or?
No, well, Terry Jones was a nice man.
Yeah.
But the others were fairly, I would say, not the pleasantest of people.
Did it help you, though, in terms of...
Yeah, I realised I didn't want to work in it.
Well, you could have got trapped in the
yeah, I mean, he were very well paid,
yeah.
But it wasn't for me. I did it for a few feature films, and then I became a focus puller. Well, I worked at Granada Television, so I did actually start there as an assistant cameraman, freelance, and I worked. Granada Television was a wonderful powerhouse. I worked on World in Action and 7 Up and Disappearing World and. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic documentaries.
World in Action, wasn't that the sort of ITV equivalent to Panorama, or?
Well, it's a bit harder written than that. It was Thatcher's most hated programme.
Was it?
Oh, yeah, and she hated Granada Television because I was working there, supported the miners' strike, and they were instrumental in getting the Birmingham bombers investigated and released. So I did that, but then I moved into doing drama, so I became a focus puller and then a camera operator, which was good because you could have like 3 months work on. I worked on all the Sherlock Holmes with Jeremy Brett, which was really good. And you could do 3 months, get very well paid, and then I could have 3 months off taking photographs. That way it supported me practice.
So subsidised the start of that whole documentary leaning.
Yeah.
Because we have such a wide geographical engagement on this podcast, perhaps you can talk about, I suppose, the North a little more and paint a picture of the cultural and social scene, because it was, particularly in the 70s, it was a vibrant place.
Yeah, the 70s was a really interesting decade. And the Office of National Statistics have said that it's the most equal decade that there's been in the 20th century. Right. When there was more social mobility than any other time, which was to my advantage. I went to art college, and you really got the feeling that you could actually, you could pursue this profession. Though when the 80s hit, it really did get very, very difficult.
Well, you mentioned Thatcher. She came to power 1979, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's when it all hit the fan.
In terms of your photography, these were challenging but interesting times to photograph, I would have thought.
Well, they were, because certainly in the 80s, when you really got that brutal demise of industry, in textiles, mining, steel making things, I could see it was all, it was going at an unbelievable pace. without much being put behind it. So that's when I did, he thought, well, I'll make some sort of attempt to make a record to what this meant to people in the communities.
I couldn't afford a car, so walked from my home in Eccleshill across the city looking for subjects to photograph. I know we're going back a bit further here. I shot in black and white, not for aesthetic reasons. That's all I could afford. But you've since grown rather fond of monochrome, haven't you, really? That's where you've stayed. That's your home.
It sort of works. And I still, whenever, if I go photographing something, first thing I do is ditch my car anyway. Because, it's a better way of working is actually walking through an environment and that community, because you do engage with people. They ask you what you're doing, or you strike up conversation. So it's a really good way of working. And the black and white, it's true, I couldn't afford colour, but I could process and print my own black and white. And I was always wanting to move into colour, but then I was working at a foundry and I was shooting colour. And they all complained.
Oh.
They said, we don't like these colour pictures. So I said, well, what's the matter? And one of them said, well, we thought, one, you were a proper photographer.
Oh.
And then this other guy said, it's simple. And he said, them black and white pictures look how it feels to work in industry. And I thought, well, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
And if a man who's worked in a steel foundry for 40 years
tells you that, yeah,
thinks a black and white picture represents his working life better than a colour one, he's got the right to say that. And so, then I subscribed to it and said, yeah, okay.
I mentioned just a moment ago that it's abundantly clear your engagement with those that you photograph. And there's a relationship of trust in your pictures, isn't there?
Well, I would hope so, because I've always thought you should treat people as you would like to be treat yourself. So I've always I always thought, well, if you show people some, respect and dignity, it works. Mm. A lot of the people I photographed, I'm still in contact with some of them. They get in contact with me now and again, which is really sort of quite nice. Well, I've done something right there, really.
I guess when you photograph the art of clubbing, this relationship of trust was really needed, because it's so easy to treat a club project as a reportage piece on misbehaviour, isn't it? Whereas yours is not about that.
Well, it was a weird project, that, really. I don't think I really got to grips with it. But,
I like it.
I haven't looked at it for a long time. I did like the Northern Soul clubs that I went to. And I did, Granada Television, I did work on they did the seminal documentary on Wigan Casino.
All right.
It's where they claim that Northern Soul was invented.
I didn't know that.
Because it was DJs that were playing these obscure soul records, B-sides and forgotten artists. And Wigan Casino, it was a Saturday night. Soul train used to come from, did it run from Hull? There were a train that used to fill up with Northern Soul fans that come across the north of England. It'd go to Wigan Casino, and it'd be all night. It'd finish about 6 a.m, and it's when they developed that really, vibrant style of dancing. I can't remember why it closed, actually.
Well, I might be able to help you out. After Wigan Casino closed in 1981, the building was demolished in 82 to make way for a new civic centre development. However, plans for the replacement never fully materialised as intended. Normal thing, lots of meetings at the council, important councillors, drinking far too much tea and voting on what biscuits to have instead of the important stuff. And for years, the site was left largely empty. Eventually, it became part of the Grand Arcade Shopping Centre, which opened much later in 2007. But let's talk about the history of the place for a moment, from when it was truly alive. First up, the name, Wigan Casino. Well, it was never actually a casino. The name was likely chosen to give it a bit of an American-style allure, something exotic and exciting for the dancers who'd travel from all over the country to experience the energy of a place that opened originally in the early 20th century as a ballroom. For 8 years, though, from 1973 to 1981, Wigan Casino was the epicenter of Northern Soul, a musical movement built on rare American R&B records. relentless energy, and all-night dancing. The venue became legendary for its marathon dance sessions, where devotees would spin, flip and shuffle to obscure Motown-esque tracks that never found fame in these states, but became gold dust in the north of England. The club's all-nighters were famously electric. DJs unearthed forgotten gems from labels like Tamla Motown, often B-sides actually, creating an underground scene obsessed with exclusivity and discovery. The dancers moved on with athleticism that bordered on acrobatics, while records like Frank Wilson's Do I Love You, Indeed I Do, and Gloria Jones' Tainted Love became anthems of the movement. By 1978, Wigan Casino was named the best disco in the world by Billboard. An ironic accolade, really, for a club that had nothing to do with disco in the commercial sense. But by the 80s, the scene was fading. The club did indeed close in 1981, making way for that shopping development that didn't come straight away, but its influence never waned. Northern Soul survived, its spirit living on even now in clubs and compilations, and a dedicated community of fans who still chase the next great record. More than just a nightclub, Wigan Casino was a cultural phenomenon, one that turned forgotten American soul into a British obsession, proving that sometimes, the biggest musical revolutions happen in the most unlikely of places. We'll return to my conversation with Ian Beesley very soon. Let's make sure you're aware of what this month's assignment is. It's a one-word assignment set by the photojournalist and former guest, Claire Thomas. Claire, what's that one-word assignment for this month going to be?
So my one-word assignment is going to be humanity.
Oh, I like it. And that's very fitting for you.
Exactly. That's what a lot of my work is all about.
I would imagine some people will look at your work and say, well, that's okay for you, Claire Thomas. You can show humanity in some of the places that you'd least expect to find it. And it's a bit like when we say, well, the world's a lot more interesting if you get on a jetliner and find it. Whilst it can be on your doorstep, can't it? Humanity can be. Do you have any examples of perhaps what humanity means or what it can mean?
A nice moment of interaction with family members, or with an animal, or it could even be a self-portrait of something that you feel shows your humanity, self-reflection.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm always drawn to is hands. And I feel like hands tell an extraordinary story of humanity. You can tell a lot about a person and what they've lived through by their hands. But it can be anything. Take it in any direction.
You have just 2 weeks to take part in Claire's one-word assignment. Good luck. If you'd like to send your entries into the email address, stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, that would be great. Remember, if you can, to resize them to 2,500 pixels width. 2,500 pixels width. No borders, no watermarks, but do remember to send me some links to your socials or your website, your blog, etc. Let's return now then to my guest this week, Ian Beesley. I have a proper soft spot for photography that documents what I call real football clubs.
It's not the glamorous end of football.
No, maybe not. And Bradford City's been your muse for a long time. You're a big fan anyway, aren't you?
I am season ticket holder.
I did have to look them up this morning just to see where you are in the league. Seventh.
Well,
seventh in League Two at the moment. You've got a big cup match tonight, haven't you? I think.
Well, I don't know if you call it a big cup match.
A cup match.
What, the EFL trophy?
That's it, yeah.
It's a bit of a Mickey Mouse Cup, that, isn't it?
Are you going to be there?
No, it's in Rotherham. And I've got to go to London tomorrow morning early, so...
Okay. Well...
I won't be going with that, but I'd rather them get out of that league. It's an awful league to be stuck in.
Well, there's a lot to photograph in the stands, never mind the pitch. There's probably reason enough for a book. Tell me about Claret and Amber, in obviously black and white.
Well, that's when we got into the apprenticeship.
Were you there 2 years, or was it a year?
2 years,
2 years, yeah.
And it's when we had the National Museum of Photography in Bradford, which we no longer have. And I thought it'd be really interesting to do a project about that. And I know that there were loads of people, they all say, oh, we'll come and do a season. But I went to see the chairman and said that, I want to do it, but I don't want to photograph the football. I want to photograph the fans.
Fans, yeah.
Because they're the constant. In the Premiership, the players will come for a season or two and they're gone. There's not much loyalty on that side. And he were up for it. I got an access all areas pass. I thought it was going to be the dream job.
Was it not?
No. After about... Because the whole thing was, I hadn't really thought it through, had I really? Because I was photographing the crowd, so I was sat with my back to the action.
Yeah, and you're a fan.
Yeah, and you're a fan, and it's very difficult. And I used to be always getting told off.
Well, you were?
Yeah, because I'd get involved in the game, you see, and you're not supposed to do that if you're on the touchline photographing it. You're meant to be neutral. And I just found it really hard.
But there are some great pictures, though, from it.
I think it's a nice body of work. I'm fairly proud of that. And I think the first season, I captured what it meant. In the second season, which they asked me to do, that's when it all started to go wrong for the club and everything. So there's that body of work I've never really exhibited because, when you get relegated, people don't remind you of that season.
Mind you, that first season when you stayed up, I think there's a particular picture of a fan who's kneeling on the pitch on the.
Oh yeah,
and tell me about this picture because there's a steward looking like he's running full pelt at this guy.
Oh yeah, he took him out, and the steward took me out from behind as well.
Because it seemed to be everybody was on the pitch. Why this guy?
Yeah, well, as you know yourself, you're not supposed to invade the pitch.
No, sure, but there was everybody on it. I just wondered why this guy.
It's just some steward. Well, there was one particular steward I think didn't particularly like me. I don't know why.
Right.
So he was the one that flattened me from behind, and the other bloke, Mick, who was the one praying, he's got some form of Tourette's.
Right.
So in the stand, he's incredibly lively. And I would say something like 95% of Bradford City fans, they all know him and love him. But there's certain people who don't, they complain about him. These stewards, some of the stewards are a bit unpleasant to him.
That's 20-odd years ago now, isn't it? Is he still there?
He's still there, yeah. I saw him the other week. He still is enthusiastic.
Still as vocal.
Yeah. I mean, you could see he could probably he can get on your nerves a little bit. But, if you tell him to calm down, he's fine.
I was trying to explain to somebody recently what being a proper fan of a club means, because I think that's changed a bit as well, hasn't it, really?
It has, particularly with the rise, it's on television, isn't it? So a lot of kids... I was brought up in Bradford, so you support your local team. But now they don't, do they? Some do. It's hard to generalise, but then you get, a lot of people watch it on television and, they see Liverpool or they see Arsenal and Man City. They go, I'm going to support them.
We grew up not that far from, my dad in particular, from Arsenal, but he was sort of equidistant between Highbury and White Hart Lane. So he's one of those unusual sorts that would go and see in the days where it was Tottenham at home one week, Arsenal the next. Doesn't work like that now. He'd go and see both. Yeah, well, I've got friends who, which I would never do, but, Leeds used to be in the first division, the old first division. Yeah. Bradford would be in the fourth. And that were a similar sort of thing. So people they'd go to Bradford one Saturday and then the following Saturday they'd go support Leeds. I was going to say, do you have a soft spot for Leeds? No, I don't have a soft spot for Leeds. You're not one of those supporters. Oh, no, I do. Some of my worst football experiences have been at Leeds. Oh, God, OK. Particularly probably in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, but even when I was, I went to photograph Bradford City and I was just covered in, the back of my jacket was just covered in spittle. The industrial landscape, just to pull it back round to that, has changed dramatically since you began your career. Has that evolution influenced other sides of your work? Well, it probably has, though. It's like when you start to look at all the work that I've done, everything's connected. And I mean, in the last 20 years, I've done a lot more work in health, because I'm the artist in residence for the Bradford Institute of Health Research. And a lot of that is looking at
health issues, particularly in Bradford, which, quite a lot of them in the older generation would have arisen from industrialisation, the pollution, the living conditions. But now, because of the demise of industry and a lot of affluence has gone out of Bradford, you've now got what poverty causes.
Mental health situation.
Yeah, mental health, lack of aspiration. There's all them sort of things. So it's all connected. So to some extent, I suppose you could say that I have, followed a bit of a thread with the post-industrial effects.
You also did that project about the children being born, the photographs of the fathers with the children, didn't you?
That's the project called Born in Bradford.
Yeah, Born in Bradford, that was it.
Which is one of the world's largest longitudinal birth cohort genetic research programs in the world.
I did not know that.
No, what they're doing is they're tracking 35,000 children, babies that were born in Bradford for 18 to 20 years to see what's causing various illnesses, particularly childhood illnesses in Bradford, and whether it's caused by genetics, caused by the environment, it's caused by diet. So the father's bit was one of the first bits I did because sadly, at that time, Bradford had one of the highest rates of abandonment by fathers of their newborn children. And I said, well, maybe we should actually photograph fathers with the newborn as, examples of what good fathering looks like, because the research said that a lot of the fathers who abandoned their children had been abandoned by their fathers.
Oh, just a reoccurring pattern there.
Yeah, so it's a reoccurring thing.
Yeah, and the fathers that you photographed, what was their reaction to the project?
Well, I loved it. I mean, it's one of them ones because it also came about because when my daughter was born, and it's one of them, I don't have a picture of me holding her on the day she was born, which I think is quite a significant point in anybody's life.
Well, I've got to say, I've got two boys. I don't think there's a picture of me with our two lads.
There's a picture of uncles, aunties, the mother and stuff like that.
Mother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah, and they can always say, well, you're the photographer or the man as the photographer. And I think, well, I don't know, is it? And then originally, when we started this project, which is it's the 18th year of it now, I've been working on it. They said, we've got you permission to go photographing the delivery streets of babies being born. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea, really, because, when my daughter was born, it's a very, very stressful and difficult time. And I said, I don't think it's right that a white middle-aged man is intruding on this privacy. And of course, my partner, she's a nurse, and she said, well, that's a really bad idea. A lot of women do not want to be photographed in childbirth. So then I said, well, why don't we just reverse it? We'll photograph the fathers as soon as possible after they've been born. And that's what we did. And it went round all the maternity unit, saying that his photographer would, I'd get a phone call at 5 a.m. saying we've got about 7 deliveries coming. So I go down and it were a really nice project, that. And it's some really interesting images, I think, of, you get really, what's the word?
Well, really intense moments, I should think.
Yeah, well, you get somewhere, you've got pictures of men that are really sort of quite tough looking.
Who've been softened by the whole process.
Yeah, and you can see that they're absolutely besotted. So, that's how that came about. And then after that, we decided I photographed twins for 18 years.
I saw that, yeah.
So that's quite but that was originally we did it as a thank you because Bradford's a very poor city. And the people that are in this research, I mean, they don't get paid for it. They do it out of the sheer goodwill. So twins are very important because you can tease out whether it's genetic or external factors. So they're really important in that research. So they wanted all the twins, as many as possible, to come. And I just said one day, well, why don't we just do portraits, professional portraits, as a thank you? So we started with about 4 families coming, and now we have over 90.
Wow.
come.
And these are done in a kind of democratic fashion, as in that they're all done on white backgrounds.
Yeah, we just set up a white background in one of the big offices at the hospital, and people come. But then, a lot of them have said, they can't afford, a decent camera, or they can't afford to pay for a professional photographer. So they really value this service. And I give them the copyright on the images, so they're all theirs, but then they license them back.
In terms of you as a professional photographer, how does that work?
A lot of the time, a lot of the stuff I do is, I haven't got in the mind it's going to be an exhibition or a book.
No, although there's 25 books.
Oh, it's nearly 50 now.
Is there nearly 50? What?
It's about 50 publications.
Hang on, I counted 25. But 50 publications.
There's a lot of others. A lot of them, particularly in health.
Yes.
They're like A5, 32
I see. Yeah.
And we just give them away.
Yeah.
So I create, if we're working with a certain community, and people do like a book as an artifact. So it's a really nice thing, and you can produce them quite cheaply. So have you ever heard of a thing called a chapbook?
No.
Well, a chapbook is it's a derivative of the word cheap book.
Right.
And it goes right back to the 16th century, where a printer worked out with a sheet of October paper, if he folded it 8 times, he could produce a book of 16 pages.
Okay.
Which is what they used to do. And it was a massive thing in England right up into the 19th century.
I'd never heard of it.
Where they produced these cheap books, which became known as chapbooks.
Chapbooks. And how do they cut to?
Well, you fold it, but these just probably stitched, and they're about A5, and there were. A lot of them were political campaigning, social campaigning. The Victorians loved scurrilous stories like Jack the Ripper and things like that.
Right.
But then in the last 10 or 20 years, they've become really big in Brazil and South America, where some of the top artists and designers produce these chapbooks for doing social reform and social issues. And the fact is that they're so cheap, the idea is that you give them away.
So you've been making chap books?
Yeah, and we're lucky because in Manchester, one of the greatest collections is in a library called Chetham's Library, which is the oldest public library in the English-speaking world.
I have to say, Ian, I often say every day's a school day. It's turning into one for me here.
Which is a medieval building right in the centre of Manchester. And it's not a lending library.
No.
It's a public library. You can go in and you can look at anything.
Right.
They have books going back to the 14th, 15th century. And it's where Karl Marx used to meet Friedrich Engels. They used to sit in Chetham's Library reading room, and that's where he started to write Das Kapital and Engels, The Condition of the Working Classes.
Have you got some of your chap books in there?
Yeah, they've got a collection of mine in there. They've got the most wonderful collection of South American chapbooks. And some of them are just, really, really funny.
In what way?
Oh, quite obscene about politicians, about what politicians get up to.
I could think of a few chap books that would be produced.
Well, there's a very fun, I remember looking at one, and it was about, what they call it, Clinton.
Right.
He's affair with what they call
Lewinsky, Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, and it's in Portuguese about the corruption of Western politicians, but it's very funny.
A Portuguese chapbook about Monica Lewinsky and Clinton. There we go.
Yeah,
there's something
a great influence.
Wouldn't have thought you'd have ever found. Before we return to this week's show, my thanks to those who keep us walking each week, such as our patrons, you know who you are, and now arthelper.ai for the next few months. If you've ever thought about selling your photography online but haven't a clue where to start, I think Art Helper could probably help you because it's made for people like us. Here's how it works. You upload a photo, magically and instantly professional content is made for you, such as social media posts, email newsletters, even full Substack articles, all in your own voice. It can also generate hundreds of mock-ups for every image you upload, things like your work framed, so people get a real understanding of what your photograph could look like on their wall. It helps you connect with the right buyers and even suggests pricing based on your market. And unlike most AI tools, it has an art protection guarantee, which means something very important: your images are never used for AI training. Free to try, and Art Helper is giving our listeners a special deal. Go to arthelper.ai, use the code PHOTOWALK and get 30 days free of the pro version. I'll have a link on the show page. It's a great way to start selling your art or growing the business you already have. And thank you, arthelper.ai, for your belief in this show.
And we return to Ian Beesley, my conversation with him shortly. Remember, this month you can win yourself a pair of Loaver boots for the trail ahead if you send in a great story about your walking adventures with a camera. This one, due to shipping, is for our UK friends this time. Send your stories and your pictures to stories@photowalk.show. I didn't mention this the last couple of weeks, but might be handy if you send us your boot size as well. No, not essential, because we'll always grab it from you later on. Right, Teach Me Street. Looking for your questions about photographing on the street in a more candid fashion, since it's Valérie Jardin. Also looking for pictures that you've made for Valérie to critique, constructively critique that is, with her decades of knowledge. All questions sent in for this and all pictures used will receive an e-book of your choice from Valérie's library of releases. It's an extensive one too. Here then, before we return to Ian, is this month's Teach Me Street.
So, next stop for the world tour of Valérie Jardin is Mexico City. Fabulous. Yes. You go there quite a lot, though, don't you? I think.
Well, I've been alternating. I was there 2 years ago with a group, and last year went to Oaxaca, which is in the south part of Mexico, and back to Mexico City this year. So, yeah, I mean, I love Mexico, and Mexico City is such a vibrant city. People are lovely, friendly. The food is probably the best food I've ever had anywhere.
Well, Oaxaca,
amazing.
Well, Oaxaca is the name of one of my favorite restaurants. It's a chain in.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and it's a place we often go to when we go to London. So the food is excellent. But you can't spend your entire time in a restaurant, obviously.
No, and unfortunately, I'm not a foodie. So, but coming from a French person saying that some of the best food I've ever had, it's pretty good. From what I hear from my foodie friends, is some of the best chefs in the world are in Mexico City.
And when it comes to street photography in Mexico, why is it so vibrant? Why is it so different?
Oh, well, it's different in there's so much exciting architecture, so many amazing museums that are wonderful backdrops for street photography. So every day during a 5 or 6 day workshop, you have completely different settings. And not every city can offer that. You can go from modern architecture to really very traditional, and then the amazing museums can serve as backdrops. And then you have boats on canals and everything else that people don't think of when they're in when they think of Mexico City. So
I don't.
Very diversity of locations. So that's what when you teach, you want to be able to offer as many diverse backdrops as possible, and as well as, taking people where they can really take in the culture. And I have a wonderful local guide, and we make a good team, so it's good.
You're speaking a bit of the local lingo now as well, aren't you? You genned up.
Yes, I've been learning. I started learning Spanish, almost 2 years ago now. So I can get by. It's really nice. It's really nice to be able to get by without having to do the translating on your phone or anything, and to actually have conversation with locals. So I love it. Yeah, because I didn't take Spanish in school like a lot of people did. My second foreign language was German. So French native speaker, English as a first foreign language, German as a second foreign language. Then I learned Italian. Now I'm learning Spanish, and I love it.
Multilingual. We didn't. Our second language was French was the first one that we learned, and then you could learn German. I always thought Spanish would have been really, really useful, but we didn't get a chance to have a go at that until later on, and most people didn't by then.
Our generation.
Yeah. I think, although your getting by is probably quite advanced, my getting by and being English, and a great generalisation coming up here from my generation, is usually shout loudly, put an A on the end of it, and you're practically fluent.
That's right. Love it.
Right, let's get on with these questions. We got, Ewan McNeil is the first, actually, and he's got questions and picture. And by the by, if we read your question and Valerie critiques your photograph in Teach Me Street, then you get yourself one of your extensive ebooks from your library. How many are there now? How many ebooks do you have?
I don't even know. Ebooks? Yeah. There's got to be 12, 14. I don't know. I don't even know.
No,
actually.
there are a lot. There are a lot. It's extensive. Yeah. So Ewan's got a question and the photograph. I'll start with the question. I rarely take what could be considered street photography genre photographs, but when I do, I like it to be of a scene which would stand alone on its own without any people in it. Do you think a street photo should be interesting and engaging compositions in their own right if the people were to be completely removed from the frame? Now, you love photographing people, but not all your photographs have people in them.
So street photography, the street is optional. The people are mandatory.
Ah, right. The other way around.
And so otherwise it's architecture or urban. So if it's street photography, it's moment of everyday lives. So the human element has to be present. That said, dogs are people too. And there can be lovely moments of, a dog sitting by your doorway with an interesting backdrop or whatever on the streets. But there has to be a story of everyday life. That's really what the traditional street photography, in the pure tradition of it. It's a candid moment of everyday life. However, the street, and we'll see that on the example picture that we have today, the street doesn't have to be there. I would say 1/3 of my work on the beach.
Yes,
but
you do.
I capture people
Yeah.
all season doing things on the beach and capture everyday moment and stories and emotions. So if you have just a street, where's the emotion going to come from? Yes, you'll tell me the light, the objects have gesture too, but really street photography and what we're talking about here includes the human element.
I'm going to be a what's-it here, and I think I'm going to get a Valérie Jardin. If you were wearing spectacles, you'd be looking over your spectacles at me. Because I'm just going to say, but what about during COVID, when the narrative, the story, was of the empty streets?
Well, that's okay, but the streets were not 100% empty either. So, and that's fine. Street photographers hopefully don't just do street photography. Yeah. I do a lot of contemplative photography and things like that too. So I don't need people necessarily to be creative. However, when I shoot street or documentary photography, it's to document everyday life. And the story can be, as long as there is the idea of the human element. I have, for example, a picture of a discarded empty whiskey bottle and then a woman's shoe right next to it. I took that picture years ago. I think it was on the streets of LA or something. And there's a story there. Although the human element is not present, there is a human story there. That can be anything you want. That's also the beauty of it. It leaves room for the imagination, and you'll never know the real story since everything is completely candid. But there has to be the idea of story, human element present either in the frame or a strong sense of the human element if the human element is not physically present. So that's my take on it. That's really in the pure tradition of the genre. Of course, I don't make the rules. No one makes the rule. It can be anything you want. But if it's just an empty street, then it's about building and the urban landscape, and it's not people. So it's a completely different thing.
Well, before we get to Ewan's picture...
A little bit easier, too.
Yeah. Well, yes, it could be, yes. Nobody's going to be saying, can I look on the back of your camera? That's for sure. Contemplative, before we get to Ewan's picture, contemplative photography. We talked about it quite a while ago, actually, but describe for me what you consider contemplative and how it works for you and how it makes you feel.
Okay, so it's such a personal thing. I think everybody will have a different definition. It's letting go of everything you learned in photography and really shooting with your heart and reacting to light, color, texture, contrast, and finding the beauty. Again, it could be at the most mundane objects. And that's a class I started teaching actually during COVID, when people's world were shrunk quite a bit and some were stuck in their own home. And really, you should be able to make a beautiful photograph of anything within 3 feet or 1 meter approximately from where you're standing right now. And that's a great exercise. Now, whether you publish those pictures or it's just for you and your growth as a visual artist, that's fine. But they can make really beautiful photographs. So again, you can do a lot with your camera. And creativity is the antidote to anxiety. So this is really a perfect moment to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Yes, amen to that. Moving on. Contemplative photography, is that something that you teach within your workshops as well?
So the longer workshops, usually, yes, those are the visual storytelling workshops where it's, of course, street photography is a big component, but it's more than just that. So it's really travel photography, but seeing outside the postcard shot. And so, every year I have 2 workshops that are combine the two, and they really go well together. I used to teach them separately, and I'm thinking, why? They go really well together. Being in tune with light and reflections, even without people, will really enhance your street photography. So it's it's been really fun.
I suppose, without sounding like I'm shoehorning this in now, but the picture that Ewan sent in that we're critiquing for this Teach Me Street, there's a contemplative kind of feel to it for me, because the sunburst coming through the trees, for example, this calm photograph. But I'll let you take over. The picture will be on the show page so you can see it as Valérie talks about it. So what are your thoughts?
So obviously the photographer found the setting first and prepared, and whether there were people coming very quickly, or he waited a few minutes, could be. The sunburst was there, so at that moment you really cannot move because the sunburst will disappear. And it's a really, really nice sunburst, very sharp and beautiful star. And then you wait for something to happen. So 2 things. When you do this, usually you pre-focused on the setting, and whatever is happening may be out of focus. I sense a little bit here that either there is a little bit of movement actually in the people that are walking through, but he was pre-focused. So the background is in focus where the people that are walking through are not. So that's often the problem when you set your shot, and especially when you have a sunburst where you really can't move now, is to actually, at the last minute, you're still going to have to adjust your focus and focus on whatever subject. Track focus helps too when you have a moving subject like that, or focus tracking, I should say. But so that's the one thing I would say that could have been done. But I totally get it. I've got a lot of shots where the sunburst is so perfect. I'm not going to move now. I'm not going to recompose or change my settings or change my focus, because you risk losing the sunburst, although the sunburst will still be there if you refocus. So the story is there. It's a lovely moment of 2 or 3 children ahead. We even see some, seems like one of the children, it must be a cold day because I see some.
Yeah, it looks like there's a bit of going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you I can't think of the word right now in English.
Yes,
and then two adults following them.
Yes.
And it's, the three children are in three different age groups. And so it's a lovely moment, definitely. Two things you have to think of when you work in silhouette situation is the background. It's a little busy. Had it been in a completely open area, would have been a better spot. And then when they're far like this, obviously you cannot get a low angle to have more of the sky so that the silhouette stands out. I just gave a whole lecture on silhouettes. So when you're closer to people, so think about more sky, low angle, so that the people stand out more in the sky as a silhouette and not being completely hidden in the background, because gray on gray, you don't have a lot of contrast. So always think contrast and then background. That said, I really like the idea of framing between the trees. The sunburst is definitely an added bonus. It's beautiful and well placed. So yeah, just general tips that I hope help next time he's out in the field.
Thank you, Ewan, for that. Lee Cobbs has got a question as well. He says, this is a great idea for the show. Question, what are your techniques, Valerie, that you rely on to get inspiration or compositions flowing?
Oh, I wish there was a recipe. I really... Life inspires me. And so I think sometimes people look too hard, try too hard. Just be open your heart, respond to some really beautiful moment, little details. You don't have to have the full person in a shot. You don't have to have the face visible to really have an emotion in a beautiful shot. So it's really trying to think outside the box, not just, not look for because there's a lot of cookie cutter shots, of street photography. Yeah. Just go beyond that. Just follow your heart and look for really those moments that nobody noticed and that are so beautiful. And I think for that, you just can't go out with a plan. I mean, it's nice to give yourself assignments, and I do that all the time. I wrote a book on assignments so that people have something to push them to get out the door. But sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and look at life around you and those little moments without having a plan. Just let the street surprise you. And that's exactly my technique. I just let the street surprise me and I respond. I rarely stand in one spot to get a shot. I do that on workshops because I have to teach how to do that. And I used to do it more than I do now, but now it's all about quick reaction to the moments. That's where I get the most satisfaction because, again, I only have one person to please. It's me. So
do what makes you happy, I think, is what Valerie's saying. Well, have fun in Mexico City. There's a sign there's a sign I see behind Valerie every single time I talk with her, and it says, "Travel is the only thing you buy that makes you rich." And that's the truth, isn't it?
That's right. It's all about experiences. And gear is good, but the experience is still a lot better. So just get out there, have fun, take a deep breath, and forget. Get in the zone and forget everything else when you're with your camera. We're so lucky to have that option.
So then, if you'd like to ask Valerie a question or have her critique one of your pictures, then there's two ways to do that in Teach Me Street. Either send an email with your picture to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, or go to our Facebook group, which at the time of posting, i.e. now, has a pinned post you can use to post your picture or and ask your question. Right, let's return to my guest this week, the documentarian with a camera, Ian Beesley, having safely just left a little space between the chapbooks, Monica Lewinsky, and a former president. Let's go up to date a bit as the world emerged from that time over the last few years. 2022, you hosted a retrospective of your work. I don't know how on earth, with an archive of 200,000 plus images, you can even begin to work out what's going to be shown.
Well, indeed, because I don't know if you've ever been to Salts Mill.
I haven't, and I'm all the poorer for it.
Well, it's one of the biggest mills.
I know, I've seen it. It's a behemoth of a building, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. And the roof space is the longest room in Europe, and it's an unsupported roof. It's a cantilever roof,
right?
No pillars. It's over 230 metres long.
And what would have been in that space?
Well, it was a vertical mill, so that's where the wool went in at the top.
Right.
And then it used to go down,
trickle
to
down,
the
and
processes.
yeah.
And on the bottom floor, where all the weave was done, and it was taken out. But I've worked with Salts Mill and the Silver family who own it for 40 odd years. And we were going to do a bit of a retrospective pre-COVID, but then of course COVID hit and everything went completely out the window. And after COVID, the mill contacted me and said, we've lost our entire exhibition programme. So we wondered, could we do something? She said, you can do, she said, I know you'd like to do a career retrospective, but we want to put it in the roof space because we want to try and get people back. So I thought, well, yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, it worked, didn't it? Because tens of thousands turned up in the first 10 weeks.
We had 38,000 visitors.
38,000. That worked.
Yeah, and it worked because when I went there and I thought, well, how do I do this? I don't know how I'm going to do it. Because we didn't have it. Salts Mill had supported all the businesses and stuff, so they didn't have a lot of money to throw at it. I didn't have any. But then a friend of mine, a curator at a gallery, he said, just work in the space. He said, just take everything. So I emptied me dark room, the attic, the garage. I took everything. Boxes of prints, everything. And we couldn't afford to frame anything. Some of it were framed, a lot of it wasn't. But then we hung it in a really organic way. Zoe, who runs the mill, she said, why are you putting that print? Well, I said, well, it's a bit damaged. I didn't process it right. And she said, oh, I think you should put that up. It's really interesting.
The imperfection.
If you think now, there's a lot of this whole generation who don't know that much about traditional photographic techniques. And of course, that turned out to be one of the strengths. We were running out of time, so I just ended up handwriting loads of captions and like that. And it just took off. Yeah, and we had 38,000 people visit. All the press picked it up. Interesting, before that, I tried to get a book deal and nobody was interested. But then the moment it's been on national television in national papers...
Oh, look, the phone starts ringing.
Yeah, so we produced the book, Life, which the first edition sold out within about 3 months. It's in the second edition now, and I think it's about 3/4 sold out now. So,
what's a typical run on a book?
It's about 1,000 copies on a big one because it's a big, thick book.
Yes,
it's over 300 pages. So it's most photographic books are around 1,000.
Then the latest exhibition, Life Goes On. What's the difference between the two?
Well, one of them ones, Life was only on for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Various logistic reasons. Because it's in the roof space in the mill, there's no electric lighting in it, and there's no heating. And it's also, the insurance premium goes up for it because they've left it completely as was. So it's never been changed since the mill closed. So it's a bit rough and ready, which means the public liability insurance goes up.
Yeah.
So it was only on for the 10 weeks. And then Zoe at the mill kept ringing. Ian says, we're just getting phone calls and emails saying, is the exhibition going to go back in? Or, we're doing next. So we left it for about a year. And then I said, we'll have to do something. So we're in the other gallery, which is still a massive gallery. And I said, well, I've got so much stuff, we might as well put a load of other stuff in. So that's why that's called Life Goes On. The response to that has again been unbelievable. So Zoe, she said, do you know what? I think we're just going to have to keep it for the rest of the year. It's Bradford's Year of Culture.
Yeah.
2025, it's a city of culture. So it fits in with that. So
Life Goes On.
It does go on.
A number of those who listen to this show have been to your exhibition. I'm delighted now that I get a chance. And in guest editor fashion, I was talking with a couple of listeners to the show in particular who were keen to ask you questions. And they,
Right, okay.
so if you don't mind, I'm gonna.
No, I don't mind.
I'm making way for them. First one was Ewan McNeill, and he had it's a reasonably long observation. So hear me out. We've kind of talked about it slightly, but you might have more to say about it. And then he has a question. The exhibition, he says, really engaging, especially the photographs in a venue like a working mill. What struck me most was how the images were displayed. So you did lay reference to that. There were a few frame prints, but the majority was stapled to the wall with handwritten notes nearby. My favourite being the anecdote about blowing open a safe and giving all the money inside to a nearby convent during World War II. It made for a really engaging experience compared to having everything stuck behind glass. Incredibly refreshing to see the contact sheets with bits of string linking images on the wall to the sequence in which they were taken on the contact sheet. So he says, I'd be really interested to know if this is the first time we know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear more about it. If it's the first time you've chosen to exhibit in this way.
Pretty much so. The idea of linking the images with string came down because, I don't know about you, but during lockdown, I watched a lot of police dramas.
And they link everything with string to the crime.
Yeah. They have them evidence boards. Yeah. And I thought, oh, they're so good.
Yes, yeah.
They're so good.
Scene of the crime.
Music, yeah. And one of the things I did, because I photographed all around the streets of Bradford in the 70s, and I have to confess that quite a few of them, I were a bit unsure where they were.
Right.
So what I did was I got a big map of the centre of Bradford, which we blew up, and we pinned that to the wall. And then the images that I did know, I'd put a pin in where I took it, and I'd take it off to the print, and then I'd write, this is there. Ah. But then some of the prints I didn't know, we put around with a note saying, if anybody can identify where this street is,
genius.
Please, let me know, we put a piece of string on. And it were really good because we had one, and it's some boys playing marbles, and the boy that's leaning against the wall at the back rang me up.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, and he said, this is me and my brothers.
Oh, incredible!
And this is the street, which was wonderful. And the street's no longer there; it got demolished.
Yeah, but what an amazing! Did you meet up with him?
Yeah. He came and we had a nice chat and stuff. And we had there were quite a lot of people who turned up. What was really nice is when you got sort of grandchildren and children came and said, my grandma said she was a burglar and mender. And I don't know what it was, but now I do because I've seen a photograph.
There's like detective work from those coming to the actual exhibition.
Yeah, which ties in with an evidence board in the police.
It does.
Then I also thought, when I'm a bit like you, I've been to a lot of retrospective exhibitions, and after a bit they get on my nerves because it's all so pristine. And it's about, it's fantastic print. And then some professor will write this really erudite analysis. And I've often thought, but that's not how I work. It's quite messy.
Yeah.
It's a messy business.
Well, Ewan had said that he didn't like printed, pretentious captions. That's why your exhibition works brilliantly for him.
Yeah, and I did have one where it was quite interesting because someone went around and corrected all the grammar. She was doing a teacher. And then
not writing on the stuff.
Yeah, sort of putting the commas in and stuff. And then quite a few people complained, and I said, well, I think she's probably right. Really, I should actually make sure it's spelled. And they said, no, we quite like that because it gives children the confidence to do it because if they see it in a gallery and I've spelt stuff wrong, they're thinking, well, it's not a crime. The important thing is doing it, isn't it?
I'm going to take my Sharpie to the next Tate Modern exhibition and correct them all.
I don't mind though, because I don't mind if people write on the stuff anyway. Because people say, what happens if people write on it? I said, well, it don't matter if it's a response.
Well, I suppose the way you've done it in this wonderful down-to-earth way, that people feel more confident to be a part of your exhibition in a way that they wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, and we've never had anything damaged.
No, there's a respect for it, yeah.
Yeah, you get people touching them because a lot of them won't have had an experience of what a photographic print feels like.
Yeah, so there's the tactile nature of it.
They like the tech. And then the other thing that quite a lot of them like is because in this later exhibition, what I did was I just photographed 100 5x4 negatives and exhibited them because the sort of younger generation don't know what a negative is.
It's encouraging that there are more young people now. Listen to us sounding like two old farts talking, but there are younger people that are interested in now furthering film.
Yeah, they are. It's been a big, because I taught at universities.
Yes.
And certainly in the last decade, you got more and more young students coming because they wanted to do, and I hate that term analogue because I don't really understand why, it's photographic techniques. And quite archaic ones, because they realised, one, that it's actually, it's handmade, it's tactile.
So you prefer handmade to analogue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, just if you say photography, that's the right word for it, isn't it?
Yeah. Ewan did have another question here. On occasions, he says, where prints were framed, such as the image of Dolly, and you might tell us about Dolly in a moment, because I know she's a really, really important part of this. There was a longer handwritten descriptive title underneath the print, surrounded by newspaper cuttings, and more handwritten notes, which really helped tell the story around the image. I hadn't realised before visiting that many of the images were workplaces and industries, just as they were closing down. And if you get a chance to ask, I'd love to know from Ian if that created a different dynamic when talking to the people in the photographs, and how engaged they were in having a photographic record of their profession and workplace preserved in this way.
Which bit do you want me to answer first?
Well, I should have broken that up into bits there.
Well, the first bit, if we talk about...
Let's talk about Dolly, first of all, just
Dolly,
so we got the story.
The image of Dolly, who's holding a picture of a baby to her face.
She is, yeah.
Yeah, that was taken in the Moore Psychiatric Hospital.
Yes.
I was employed as an artist in residence, working with the long-term institutionalised. And this hospital was closing because it is when it was they brought in the idea of care in the community.
Yeah, that's right.
The long-term institutionalised, who often had no living relatives, but would also, they're being capable of independent living. So they asked me to go work on this ward, and I was doing what you call photo reminiscence. So I'd try and find a bit about their lives, and then I'd try and find photographs that might stimulate a long-term memory. And I was sat with Dolly, and we were flicking through a magazine, and she saw this picture of a baby, which she lifted up to her face and started screaming, "Oh, I had a baby, I love this baby, where's this baby gone?" I mean, I took the one picture, and then the ward manager came and said, "Well, we'll have to calm her down a bit." And then they told me that she'd been incarcerated in her teens for having an illegitimate child.
Oh, what a powerful picture then.
And she never left. She died about 18 months after I took that picture. And the nature of the pictures, because they were all wards of Crown, these people, I couldn't exhibit or publish any of these pictures for 12 years afterwards.
That was a given period?
Yeah. It was, the national health and the legal side of it was the pictures couldn't be exhibited for, I think it was at least 10 years.
But now they can.
Yeah, now they can, but I have to be very careful, where it goes. And so them pictures, it was such a, I was really shocked to find this out. And she was a lovely woman, Dolly. She had dementia and stuff, but she still had sort of cognitive recognition and stuff. So I didn't actually exhibit it out for ages. And then it were at Salt's Mill at the first exhibition, where I talking to Zoe, and I said, and she said, "I think this is just such an important story."
Yeah.
So we printed it up, and I wrote the story, and then the BBC featured it. And then we put it out on a social platform, and it had 1.5 million views.
Oof.
And literally thousands of responses from people who'd worked in psychiatric hospitals, saying they knew of these examples. And this academic writer, Sarah Wise, contacted me and said, can I chase up all these people that have responded to the photograph? So she spent about a year interviewing them, and she produced a book which is called The Undesirables. She's all about that, really powerful body work. And it's proved to be a really powerful picture.
We made it in, what was it, 96?
Yeah, 96. So this is nearly 30 years after.
Yeah. It's a potent picture, definitely.
It is, and it's interesting that certain factions of the press sort of deny this story, saying it's an urban myth.
Oh.
But then we've got Sarah collated all this evidence from, and it wasn't just happening in England, it happened all across Europe. Ireland was obviously a prime example. Unmarried mothers having the children taken away, Canada, things like it proved to be quite a catalyst. I'm
just going through an ancestry thing at the moment, and I have a very similar story about my mother. The other part of this was you'd love to know if how you worked created a different dynamic when talking to the people in the photographs, and how engaged they were and having a record of their workplace.
Well, that's an interesting one, because certainly when on the closure of a lot of places, quite a lot of them, where if I got a point where I used to get contacted by either the relevant trade union or maybe the company themselves would say, we like Tetley's or Otter Company, we're going to close.
Yeah. And
we've seen your work, and we think it'd be a really good thing if we had a record of the place as is. But I was always at pains to say that, if we were going to do this, we have to do it over. We can't do this in a week. So a lot of the places that I did work on, I'd be there for a year to build up a relationship with the people who work there, because it's a brutal thing when people get made redundant and lose their jobs. And some of them can accept it because they might be at their end of their working lives. Some of them might be just at the beginning, but then you've got people who've been there 20, 30 years. And there's that disorientation of what's going to happen.
Midway point, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to be sensitive to the fact that, what they're going through is a very difficult period, and you want to give it the respect that it deserves. There were a few where I went in and they'd only let you in for about 3 or 4 days, which was always a bit harder. But then it did actually reach the point. I did so many in a spate. The last one I did was Tetley's Brewery in Leeds, which was heartbreaking. And I did that one, and I reached the point where I said, I can't do it anymore.
You felt depressed?
Yeah, because, I made you make really good friends, and you do to some extent, if Tetley's and the mine and steelworks and things, you become part of it. And then when it goes, and, it sort of affected me. And I said, I think I'm going to call it a day.
Well,
because it's hard. It tears lumps off you.
Well, that plays into a question that David Higton had for you. And I'm struggling a bit here with the word beautifully, because there doesn't seem anything nice. I don't feel I want to link the word beautiful with decline, but he did say, and he means the quality of the work, obviously, that you've beautifully documented the decline of industry. Would you have liked to have captured the industry in its absolute prime?
I don't know. I don't really. Well, I mean, there's certainly some of the places I went that were working at full capacity, and it depends how you would define the prime of it. So I'm not so sure on that. I think what I've done is it's got some validity with it. There was, interesting enough, at the what was the National Media Museum in Bradford, which used to be the National Museum of Photography.
Yeah.
They did a big exhibition with Magnum called Working Lives, which was looking at industry, because the British Industry Foundation had said they needed this body of work by famous photographers to show that industry was vibrant. And Magnum asked me if I'd assist one of their photographers. Unpaid, drive him round, introduce him to all my contacts. I was in my 60s at this point, and they said it'd be really good for your career, Ian.
I dare say your visit down to London that you were talking about tomorrow, the reason for not going to watch the Mighty Cup match tonight. You won't be visiting Magnum's offices then?
No, I'm going to the Wellcome Trust.
Ah.
They've invited me to go see them.
Oh.
Some of the curators came up last week to Salts Mill
This sounds like another exhibition.
to see me exhibition, but also went to the Bradford Royal Infirmary, where I've got about 6 or 7 permanent installations of work. But I was in Madeira last week, so
It feels like you're
I
retired.
was on my jollies. So I said I'll come and see you when I come back.
It feels, Ian, that your retirement is getting further and further away.
I think I've come to the conclusion that, you keep, like I said, I'm doing the things that I really like to do.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's the things that I enjoy, the things that I think I'm contributing to the community and society where I live. And I don't have any, the deadlines are mine. If people come and ask me, I say, well, I tell you what, I'll do it, but I'm not doing it this month. I'll think about it in July.
I'm in Madeira.
Yeah, and we've got a camper van, me and Ange, so we're away in the summer in that. But yeah, so he's panning out quite nice, really. I also like it that I can be incredibly rude to people that I don't want to work with. And it's interesting, you get to be my age. And then you get these people who, 30, 40 years, had to run backwards over burning coals to try and get work with them. And then all of a sudden, you get a phone call or an email and you're thinking, no, I really needed you 30 years ago.
I feel in an odd sense privileged that you've said yes to me for this.
Yeah, well, I do actually. I probably say, I suppose it's because I'm a socialist. It's interesting that I'm doing a little bit of work with dementia charities, local ones.
Yeah.
And they've no money.
Yeah.
But you get a big organisation will ring me up and say, oh, Ian, will you do this? Will you do that? And you say, well, okay, can we talk about money? And they go, oh, no, we don't have any money. And I thought, you're lying. I know you've got loads of money. And then these little charities, they ring up and say, we've seen you do this. Could you do this for us? And how much will it cost? And you say, well, it's that. And how much is it? And they say, well, we haven't got that money. We're going to try and get it for you. And I'm thinking, you don't have to get that money for it. I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
And I like that when they know what it's worth. And, some of them would, bend over backwards to raise the money for me.
I'm a bit worried, actually, whether I should edit that bit out, because I don't want to give your secret away and what would make Ian say yes.
Well...
But I'm sure you sniff them out. I'm sure you sniff them out.
Well, you do. And you always know that, it's people who are kind, really. You get the idea that, it's a kind organisation or it's the kind person. And they're asking with a genuine sort of empathy with your work or whatever.
Yeah.
Others, big organisations, a lot of them are just... I do like being rude to them, though. And they say, is it the money? And I go, well, that. And then the fee really starts to go up. Yeah. And they say, oh, well, pay this, pay that. Yeah. No, it's not that. And what is it? Well, I don't like you.
Do you actually say that to people?
Yeah, I said that to somebody. I don't like what you're doing. Yeah. And no. And then you just hear a silence at the other end of the phone, don't you? A little click.
Ian, I do have a last question for you, but before that, before that, I'm interested actually because you mentioned artist in residence a couple of times. What really struck me was that you've chosen, whether you've chosen them or they've chosen you, and how it works financially is probably not even important, but artists in residence at certain institutions, I think that's fascinating work. I don't know how you go about getting it, or whether it's been because you've worked hard at what you do and you've told your stories truthfully that people come to you for it. But it seems to me that that's something that's really precious to you, some of these artist in residence placements that you've had.
Yeah, well, you work out to get that. I've done it a long time, so you end up with the experience to set the parameters of what it is. I've been artist in residence for the Bradford Institute of Health Research for 18 years.
I know, it's an incredible amount of time.
Yeah, and sometimes they've had no money, but there's that thing where you have a trust. I know that at that time they didn't get any money, but when they have got any money, it'll come through, and it works like that. And it's worked like that with other places as well. And it only works if it's like a true collaboration.
And trust.
Yeah, it's often the fact that the ones that I like is the ones where they give you, they trust you sufficiently to give you, a free hand.
Yeah.
So them are the ones that I stay with.
I think they're incredible projects.
The only thing is the artist in residence is a bit of a snotty title, isn't it?
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, the only problem is I once did one in a mill, and they had me as photographer in residence. But then the only problem is I used to get like accounts department ringing me up and saying, "Could I go photograph this car park barrier that had broken because they hadn't have an insurance claim?" And all things like that, You think that's not quite what it is.
No.
Whereas if you say artist in residence,
Then
they don't do that. Though they're very confused that you're not doing any painting.
Yeah. Would you go and paint that barrier that's been knocked down?
Yeah. Can you do it in an impressionist style? Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to coming to see this exhibition now that I know it's on for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And
you have another question, though.
I do have another question. I'm wondering as well if I come up this year, whether Bradford City. I mean, you're 7th. You might be going up a division this year. That's not my question, by the way. But
I sincerely hope that we do.
Yeah.
I've got an awful feeling we're going to end up in the playoffs again.
Playoffs not a good place. I don't know if you're allowed to have a second team, but I do, and I've been in that horrible position with Reading, where we've been in those playoffs, and I've only ever seen it go south.
And the thing is, if you're in the second division playoff at Wembley, it's a hell of a long journey home.
It is.
Hopefully, we'll see how we get on.
Right. Okay.
But your question was...
After all these years of being a photographer and doing what you do, telling the stories that you do, what's your why?
I suppose at the end of the day, I enjoy it. That's the main thing. I enjoy it. I've always enjoyed talking to people and going to different places and then trying to produce something that, it works on various levels. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's the satisfaction of doing something like that and being lucky enough to be able to do it.
I suppose meeting people like Dolly.
Yeah, I mean, I've met some fantastic people and I've been to some fantastic places, so it's good fun. And a lot of laughs. I always think it's good if you have a few laughs. I always look on the bright side of life, I would say.
I didn't think...
Yeah, which wasn't pleasant, but there you go.
There's the irony.
Yeah, it is, definitely. Definitely an irony in that one.
And my sincere thanks to my guest today, Ian Beesley. All links, of course, I will leave on the show page so you can follow to his work, his photographs. And that's it for today. And if you can't wait until next Friday and you want to walk a little further together, then our special extra mile editions will be of interest to you. We're at number 132 at the moment. Before that, there were a whole swathe of shows called, what was it called? More, wasn't it? More. And there's some archive material in there as well. But 132 of the extra mile edition, it is. That's where we are at the moment. It's waiting for you. Our extra show for those who support this podcast through Patreon. You go the extra mile for me, so I go the extra mile for you. I'm pleased Pups didn't see that. There's a monk jack just to the right through the fencing here. Come, Pups, this way. Nothing to see. There's nothing to see here. The really extra special thing about the show is that often you become, well, nearly all times you become the star of it. We find out about our wonderful community through my Shoot the Breeze chats on the Extra Mile show. Projects and ideas and inspiration. This week, an Indian extra miler, Rudransh Nagi, joins me as a wonderful introduction in many ways to our Indian adventures of the last couple of weeks. And, well, here's a taster of what's waiting for you right now on the Extra Mile this week.
On this week's Extra Mile.
Every night I used to feel that I was, there was an earthquake. But the thing was, my body was trembling from anxiety. So I thought it was earthquake.
Yeah.
And the moment she heard that, she started crying because nobody before that ever told her that this could be an anxiety symptom. And so I received many messages about that, and thankfully it connected with people, and that was the whole idea of it.
The first 5 minutes of the show is available for free, so click the link on the website for the Extra Mile, and I mentioned too for our monthly InVision Zoom show, which happens usually on the first Tuesday of a new month, but with all these adventures and travels at the moment, it's this coming Monday as it goes. So if you are about to join the Extra Mile, you get a chance to join us for the Extra Mile live Zoom show, which is 90 minutes. There's two in the day, one that suits most timings for the Southern Hemisphere and one for the Northern Hemisphere. Our PS to the show is to come, but before that, we need a play-out song just to make some final frames to, or think about what's been said today. And it's from an artist called Aves. Now, this song is called Rollin'. And I'm hoping this is going to work the way intended. I wanted to find something that would provide a respectful nod to Northern Soul, mentioned with more than a fleeting dewy eye during the show today, something with a bit of tempo, something that could be playing in the Wigan Casino, perhaps.
Woke up this morning, now watch me step. The week was murder, I'm gonna get rid of the stress. I'm feeling lighter, I'm finally feeling like I can breathe. The night is calling, tension, gon' blow in the breeze. We're rolling downtown, we're grooving to the sound. We're rolling downtown. The weekend's here and it feels so right. I think I'll break the skins out tonight. I'm gonna go out and have a good time. Ain't nothing gonna stop me tonight. Ain't nothing gonna stop me tonight. Gonna throw my clothes on, tell my crew what's up. Just wanna party, ain't nobody looking for love. The music's popping, this beat has got me feeling alive. Head to the strip, these wheels gon' light up the night. I'm living in a fantasy, come on and take a ride with me. I'm tryna put your mind at ease, let me know that you're feeling me. I'm living in a fantasy, come on and take a ride with me. I'm tryna put your mind at ease, come on and get down with me. Rolling downtown, grooving to the sound. Rolling downtown. The weekend's here and it feels so right. I think I'll break the skins out tonight. I'm gonna go out and have a good time. Ain't nothing gonna stop me tonight. We're cruising by the city lights. Can't wait to break the skins out tonight. I'm gonna go out and have a good time. Ain't nothing gonna stop me tonight. It feels so right. Ain't nothing gonna stop me tonight.
That's Rollin' from Aves. We're back to normal, whatever normal means, next week. The mailbag, I've been delving into it. Oh, you've been so good, actually. The mailbag, you've been very busy writing with thoughts and ideas over the last 3 weeks, so it is back with a passion, that's for sure. My sincere thanks before our postscript today to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community of kindness in the photographic and walking world together, a safe place to share our thoughts about this thing that we do. Photographing and walking. It's such a gorgeous day today. Geese in the background, right on cue. Water level along my favourite canal is really quite high. This explains why no boats are going along it at the moment. They've all moored up. I think it's too high the water level is too high to work through the locks, I think. But certainly this is higher than it was when we went away. Well, when I went away, pups. Come on, this way. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT, Andrea Gilpin, who is across Instagram, and Kelly Mitchell, who looks after our Facebook members, plus Michael Mixon, who has pulled up a chair at the research table. A postscript for the show today is from Irving Penn, a master of portraiture and still life photography, OVS, as the kids with a Z say, known for his elegant minimalist style and his ability to reveal the depth and character of his subjects with striking simplicity. And I think it's suitable for a few reasons, actually, to choose a PS from Irving Penn, mainly because today's show has been about making honest photographs that serve to tell a story of time, of places, and most importantly, people. So today's PS from Irving Penn, I think, supports that very well. He said, "A good photograph is one that communicates a fact, touches the heart, and leaves the viewer a changed person for having seen it."
Good boy, good boy. It's nice to be back.
It is. I do love my travels, but it's nice to be back with you. I wish you wouldn't roll in stuff, though. I know. Don't bark at me. It's your fault, not mine. I didn't do that. You're having a shower. It's a shower when we get back, isn't it? Eh?
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.